Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. Welcome to another great week of TechStrong TV. Today's Monday, June 13th, and we're glad you're joining us. It was a good weekend for us, for me personally anyway, in spite of the crazy COVID situation here in Florida. I was able to get out and shoot a little golf with my sons and socially distanced, of course, from everyone else, so not much risk there. And it was just good to be outside, to tell you the truth. But, you know, the situation's still, here in the U.S. anyway, the situation is still rather dicey in a lot of areas, including where we're based in Florida. And it's like that in a lot of places around the world, right? Some places are doing, some countries have really flattened the curve well, and great for them, and we'll hope they're reaping the rewards of it by lifestyle, and it's a great thing. But, we still hope and pray for vaccines, treatments, and relief from this nightmare that we've kind of been in for the last 4 months now. And in the meantime, though, tech marches on. Tech is strong. TechStrong, that's what we're here for. And we have a great show lined up for you for this Monday. Let me go over some of the guests we have. We have from a company we haven't introduced before called Thundra.io. It's actually a spinoff from OpsGenie, and it's a full-blown observability platform. And we have Emrah Samdan, who is their chief product officer, one of the co-founders there. And Emrah joins us for a great interview. Then I'm happy that our next guest is a company I really love, a company called SourceGraph. SourceGraph's one of those tools that if you're a developer, you use it, and it's like where you've been my whole life, and then you're hooked, right? You're going to use it all the time. I think of it as sort of advanced search and replace on steroids for coding. Anyway, Quinn Slack, their CEO of SourceGraph, joins us today, and it's always good catching up with Quinn. I enjoy talking with him. And then, speaking of I enjoy talking with, one of my friends from the DevOps space, my friend Kit Merker, business development executive, rock star in DevOps. Kit's with a new company he's helped launch called Nobl9, that's Nobl9. And, their mission is to bring both reliability and velocity to your organization. So I had a good talk with Kit about what Nobl9 is all about, as well as what does it take to be successful as a business, as a tool or service provider in the DevOps space. And Kit knows a lot about that, and it was a good conversation. I enjoyed my time with Kit. Then coming out of the old, something old, archives from, just from a month ago from TechStrong Con. I have a good presentation from Anna Coella and Darpan Sunwa from Red Hat, and it's about using open practices and open technologies to solve business issues. And it's really a case study on a transformation journey. So I think you'll enjoy it. It's a good one. I'll be back then with the news. We'll turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon after that. Charlene's guest today is Dave Anderson, Director of Technology at Liberty Mutual. Should be a good one. Charlene will also be giving us a webinar preview for the week. We have some amazing webinars coming up this week in Media Ops, and we hope you'll join us for that. And then we're going to head over to the Analyst Corner. And we've got some great Accelerated Strategies Group commentary and video coming your way. And then I'll be back to wrap things up. So sounds like it's going to be a full Monday. I want to also mention, this TechStrong TV thing, we've cut it back to 3 days a week of streaming broadcasts, and then the other 2 days sort of repeat older ones that we've done. But I mean, it's so popular, and I want to apologize to, I know there's a lot of tool vendors that watch this, a lot of tech folk. We are getting so backed up in how many requests we get for interviews, and we try to accommodate, everyone who requests, not everyone, but as many people as we can, as long as, there's something newsworthy there and there's something of interest. to our audience. And so it takes us a while to get some of these out to you, unless we wanted to make this 4 or 5 hours a day, and that's a whole nother effort on our part that we're not ready to do right now. Not ruling it out down the road, but not right now. And the other thing I'll mention is, and I mentioned this with the launch of the Digital Anarchist, the new Digital Anarchist website, earlier actually last week, and that is that we have a bunch of episodic series that we're starting up. The first two are CISO Talk with Matt Newfield, CISO at Unisys, and then DevOps Unbound, which we'll have a little bit of a focus on continuous testing and acceleration, but we've got both of those coming up. And those shows will be a little longer than our regular segments. They'll be available here on TechStrong TV, as well as, of course, on Digital Anarchist and across our network. So a lot of exciting things happening. We've got a great show for a Monday lined up for you. We're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back with our first guest.
Join top experts and peers for a Splunk virtual event, DevOps Open Source Insights and Innovations. Open source powers the world, drives innovation in technology and in practice, and reduces the proliferation of products that just don't work together. In the arena of DevOps, open source tools and standards enable problems to get solved. Come take a look at some of the ways Splunk solves problems with open source and how we are contributing to open source solutions to make your work life better. Register today.
All right, as I mentioned at the top, our first guest today is Emre Samdan. He's Chief Product Officer at a company called Thundra.io is their website. And Thundra is a spin-out from Opsgenie, and it's a full-blown observability platform. And with what's going on and the acceleration of cloud transformation, it's really come in handy and really helping a lot of organizations. Let's go to my interview with Emre, and you can hear for yourself.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on this segment for TechStrong TV. Our guest today is Emre Samdan of Thundra. Emre, is that right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, perfect, Alan, thank you.
All righty. So, excuse me. Emre, as we were talking off camera, this is the first time we've had Thundra here on TechStrong TV. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of time to give our audience kind of a background on Thundra, as well as your own personal background, right? How you came to be at Thundra and position and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually. So for me, my personal background actually intersects with Thundra very weirdly. So I've been working for several companies as a software developer after I graduated and from university. And by the way, I'm from Turkey, and the last workplace that I worked for was Central Bank of Turkey. And I was kind of a software developer there, and that was just not very exciting. And I just wanted to be part of cloud movement, and I thought maybe I can just do this not as a developer, but as a product manager. And I transitioned my career to product management, and then I got hired by Opsgenie. Now turning back to Thundra's story, and in 2017, Opsgenie engineers, for those who don't know, Opsgenie is an incident management platform founded in Boston, again, engineering in Turkey. And they got acquired by Atlassian 2 years ago, and it's like kind of the biggest competitor of PagerDuty now. And they were very enthusiastic about new technologies, and they were 100% on cloud. And when they see the serverless movement, they actually couldn't resist to take this and just implement a feature with that. And they implemented a feature with serverless technologies using Java runtime, and they noticed something a bit late. So they were, they are the incident management platform, and they need to be watching themselves very closely, and they were using monitoring APM tools. And because if the option is down, who is going, like how they are going to actually alert people about the issues that they have. So but like for this serverless component, they couldn't find a solution that is on their standards, so they were using some other solutions. And for this serverless part of the system, there was no available solution, and they had to actually build their own system for monitoring system for serverless part. And this actually sparked the whole story. Our CTO Serkan was the lead of that team, and after that they started using it in Opsgenie traffic, like billions of requests per day sometimes, and millions, hundreds of millions of requests, and all monitored by this project called Tundra. And after that they saw that actually some other people also need that, and let's make this as a product, and let's hire a product manager. That's how I actually joined the team. And
Crazy. Great story.
Yeah. And when we are doing this, still under Opsgenie roof, we were not actually sure about if we need to spin this out of Opsgenie, or just like we will establish a new company or not. And we just like test the water. We listened to new people, and we decided to make it as a broader product for not only for Java runtime, but also for Node.js and Python. And it showed that actually there are tons of people out there who needs observability for serverless. And we were discussing about like, hey, let's spin this out as a separate company. And at that time, Atlassian came. And Atlassian came to buy Opsgenie because they want to have the incident management on their platform. And by that time, like the decision was, are we just closing everything and this team is joining to Atlassian as a serverless team, or are we spinning this out as a separate company? And we make the startup decision, and me, Serkan, and our CTO and some of our other friends were not part of acquisition. We just at that time spun out of as a separate company, and Tundra was born as a company during the acquisition of Opsgenie and Atlassian.
Excellent story. I was familiar with the Opsgenie to Atlassian piece of it, but I didn't realize that Tundra was it was kind of born out of that, if you will, right? Spun out of it.
Yeah.
So
not many people know.
Yeah, no, great stuff. So now, post Atlassian, Opsgenie, how has business been going? What since that time, how has the product grown, more importantly, and then how has the business grown?
Yeah, and after Opsgenie Atlassian thing, after we start standing on our own foot, we were now a very small startup talking with many customers just to improve the product. And it was last year, 2019 was this year, that speak with many people, acquire new customers. And we saw that just like in Opsgenie case, actually, there is very few amount of pure serverless architectures. So serverless is now kind of really strong developing applications. I strongly believe about this as a serverless enthusiast. But we see that companies are using serverless along with containerized technologies, along with Kubernetes, let's say, along with ECS, along with EKS on AWS. And we saw that people our solution that is only for serverless observability was very neat, very actually demand, giving the needs of what they need. But it's kind of not enough because the serverless systems are interacting with other parts. So that made us make a decision about, hey, we made already very lightweight because we made it for serverless, and it should be very lightweight for serverless because time is money directly in serverless. Lightweight APM agents. So why not we are not extending this to container platforms? And we are now we made it this for Java applications running on any platform. We made it platform agnostic. It can run on even on server that on your computer, or on EC2 on ECS, and now we are working on also making it possible for other runtimes. So this is like what we see in the industry, and like these distributed systems with serverless and the other containerized environments requires tracing, and we are very strong in terms of distributed tracing and aggregating this tracing with other metrics and logs. And the tracing shows the lifetime of a transaction, and this is kind of like how a transaction started from like a node, and after that like it just send a message to somewhere, and this asynchronously triggered another stuff. So like pulling them together is actually the hardest part, and the how can I say, old kind of APM solutions cannot address this needs completely. We as a startup actually saw that and just attacking that point.
Excellent. Okay. Some recent news about Tundra as well now, though, no?
Yeah, we got the, this year we got the our Series A investment led by Better Ventures. And by that time, we also announced another feature. So another 2 features, I can say. So we were standing with observability, and by observability, we already had the man in the middle position between the service and the other components. So we use this position to extend our offering to security, because we can control the outbound traffic of applications. In this way, we can actually let people to build a very easy application level firewall for the traffic, and again as platform agnostic, not only for serverless. And we also added debugging support, but this is only for serverless for now, because like in serverless, debugging is the biggest pain, I can say, and all the surveys are saying the same. And we solved this by introducing a real-time debugging. So which is like when you debug an application, you normally debug it on your ID, right? But like for serverless applications running on cloud, that was not possible because there was not a connection between the application running on arbitrary container and your ID. We are just providing a secure bridge between these 2 platforms that just to make the connection, and people can debug their applications from their IDs, VS Code or IntelliJ IDEA, and just like pause the execution and see the local variables and so on. This is kind of very unique to us. There is no other solution that does the same. So for example, there are other solutions that does observability or security, but debugging is kind of our like very unique gem.
Excellent. Now, as you mentioned, serverless is a very hot technology. A lot of people choosing, that platform or that method. With your customers, Emrah, would you say they are large enterprises, startups, a mix, a little of both, medium? Who do you think is actually using? And I guess who's using your product is directly related to who's using serverless, right?
Exactly. So we can just extrapolate that like our users to like all the serverless users. And when it comes to that, like serverless has a very actually different adoption curve than other technologies. Look, normally you would expect like some startups, like small companies adopt a new technology, and after that it is proven as safe, they are like the big enterprises come. But serverless promises a kind of a very obvious cost advantage, and that's attracting enterprises as well, because like they have these applications that are not running very frequently, but they are paying like lots of money for the servers to maintain the application when it is needed. So like it is ability to scale to zero and like pay-per-use. Serverless is charming the enterprises as well, and it is also like in our customers we also see enterprise customers using serverless. But again, like they are just like they get charmed with this, but then when after they start implementing, they see that hey, there is no solution for visibility and security for that. The other solutions are not enough yet, so they are just coming and just getting Tundra as the tool. And this is kind of how I see the adoption. And actually 2 weeks ago, I had a webinar with Tim Wagner, who is the first general manager of AWS Lambda. We can call him as father of serverless. And he was saying that like at the first years, the adoption was either like small companies doing small jobs or like big companies does, just adopting for cutting cost perspectives. Now, but like there were many limitations of serverless for building, real life applications. But AWS as the leading cloud vendor for serverless is just removing every obstacle every day. And in this way, like for example, they just bring a file system support for serverless, and this just unlocked many machine learning applications that can be implemented by serverless. And they were like this cold start problem there was in secure VPC environments, and it's also solved last year. So there was provision concurrency problem. They solved this. So they are just solving each and every problem just to make the serverless production ready. And starting from this year, I started to see, maybe with this pandemic, like more and more companies are now building not only greenfield projects, but also brownfield. Like the existing applications are migrated to serverless by sometimes re-architecting.
Really?
Not re-architecting. Yeah, I saw that actually.
Because that's a job, right? I mean, generally speaking, right? To take, to forklift an existing application. I mean, I guess it's one thing if you're moving an application from monolithic to a microservices, profile. While you're doing that, you can move it to serverless at the same time, I guess, if you're going to do it. But I mean, I don't know if I think that's not for the faint of heart. But interesting stuff. How has business been done? 'Cause, a lot of people are saying we're seeing 2 to 3 years worth of cloud transformation take place in 2 to 3 months as a result of COVID and people not having a choice. They have to do it. Are you guys seeing that over there?
Yeah, that's true. I can say that that's true. And no, if you ask me like what is the most profitable job in these days, like being a company doing cloud consulting and migrating people over serverless, because they see this. We know a lot about serverless and cloud, but we have a product. So sometimes I am asked by many people about, hey, we are migrating this, like we need a consulting company, and I am just like
the entrepreneur in you is yeah.
Yeah.
You've come a long way since the Central Bank of Turkey, though, and then that'll be the next thing is you leave product management and start a consulting company on your own. But hey, Emre, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for telling us all about the company, and you know what we didn't mention, website.
Yeah.
What's the website for people to get more information?
You can visit tundra.io. This is our
That's
website.
tundra.io.
Exactly.
Right?
And yeah, we are also very active on Twitter with the same tag, and on LinkedIn and everything.
Thank you so much, Emre. Okay. Thanks for joining us. So you can go to tundra.io to get more information. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We're going to be right back with our next guest. If you're designing a tool for developers or ops people or DevOps, security, what have you, you want it to be sticky. I can't think of a more sticky tool than SourceGraph. I mean, it's hard. Once you start using it, it's hard not to use it. I've told their CEO, Quinn Slack, this numerous times. Love the product, love the company. Here's my interview with SourceGraph CEO, Quinn Slack.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Our next segment here on TechStrong TV features Quinn Slack. He's the CEO of a company called Sourcegraph. I first met Quinn and became familiar with Sourcegraph. I think it was a GitLab commit that was over in San Francisco back in January. And I loved, I saw not a demo, but I saw a quick glimpse of how the product works and everything. And I was like, wow. There were so many times in my career where we had teams that could have used this for sure, and unfortunately didn't. But nevertheless, it's available now. And so I know Quinn has possibly been interviewed by Charlene on our channel, but when I had a chance to reach out to Quinn and have him come on, I was real excited. So Quinn, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So Quinn, well, look, not everyone may know who Sourcegraph is. Just because I do doesn't mean they do. So why don't we start there? Why don't you give them a quick kind of description and background on Sourcegraph?
Sourcegraph is universal code search for developers. So if you are at a company with a ton of code, a ton of developers, well, you got a ton of complexity. You probably don't move as quickly as you'd like. Probably takes longer to fix some bug or security problem across all of your code. And code search helps in the same way that you use Google 20, 30 times a day in your everyday life. When you have really good code search, and we think Sourcegraph is really good code search, then you use that so many times a day and you can't live without it. And Ellen, I would imagine most of your audience, the people that are developers or DevOps or security folks, they know roughly what search is, but they probably have never used code search. They don't know how it would help them. And I hope to change some minds here, because we have seen since the day we started Sourcegraph that most devs, most DevOps people are in that same boat. And we just love winning their hearts and minds, changing them from people that said code search, why would I use that, to I can't live without this.
I agree with you. I mean, look, I'm not a developer, but I was managing product, working pretty closely with dev teams as they were developing, and I've hacked around. When I first saw how easy it is to use the product, it really is. I mean, it's on the fly Google search for code. You want to find, where was that snippet, or geez, where did I write that thing? And you're talking applications with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousand lines of code. And I just want that snippet, and all the times that, extended search and replace kind of from a word, thing. Boom, you put it in and it's there for you. It's hard to beat. I mean, it's like auto magic, and every once in a while, Quinn, and I've been doing this a long time, you see a product like that, and it's auto magical, right? You're not exactly, I mean, you know how it works if you really think about it, but you almost are not concerned with it. It's just the fact that it works. That works. I need to do it, and then, like you said, it's kind of like crack, right? Once you start using it, man, it's hard to get off, because it's just that easy to use. So you don't have to pay me anything for this commercial. It's all good, but I absolutely loved it. Let's talk. So the last time we spoke, as I said, was in January. Of course, a lot's happened since then. Just a few things, right? Talk to us. How's Sourcegraph making out through this whole COVID situation, and how are you helping companies cope with it? Give us some background.
Well, yeah, we're now in July, so I think it's around month 6 of the pandemic. And, look, for us, the most important thing is all these developers out there, our customers, the people on our team, making sure that we are supporting them and helping them. We came into this in a different way from a lot of companies, because before anyone even heard of COVID, we had decided to go all remote. Sourcegraph, we started as a company where about half the team was remote and half the team was based in San Francisco. And then we became remote first, and that was better. But we found this weird phenomenon where the people that would go into the office, they would say it's empty. And, things are going well. We had a great team and people, loved working with each other. But if you saw your teammate's desk and it was empty, the thought wasn't, oh, Alice is working at home and she is super productive and happy. The thought was, it feels kind of awkward and empty in the office. So remote first didn't last for long at Sourcegraph, and we just said, let's just go all remote. We plan to give up our office lease in February of 2020. We were moving toward it, and then the pandemic occurred, and so we were already all remote. We were several months ahead. Yeah, we had it was a complete coincidence, and what that meant is we were a little bit better prepared to help our teammates, help our customers there, and we weren't sure what the pandemic would do. I mean, there's still so much uncertainty, but what we have seen is for all of these companies where their developers are now scattered everywhere, at home, all around the world, if you as a developer can't tap someone on the shoulder and ask them for help, well, you need code search even more to find the answer on your own. And that is affecting every company today. And as we hear more and more companies like Facebook and Coinbase and Shopify and Twitter say they expect maybe half or all of their workforce to be remote in the future, I mean, that's a permanent shift. And you need to have these kinds of knowledge tools that help developers get answers on their own, fix things on their own across the code base. Because you can't call a meeting, you can't tap people on the shoulder, you can't absorb information by osmosis at lunch anymore.
Absolutely. You can't. I mean, look, we have Slack and, the communication and collaboration kind of tools. But even in our organization, we're 25 people maybe, and we use all of that a lot. It's not the same as having people in an office, and we're in the same boat as you. Unfortunately, I have 3.5 years on my lease still. But I don't see people ever coming back to the office on a consistent basis. You might have stragglers who come in once or twice a week when all this passes, but I don't think people are coming back full time to our office. But I do miss the camaraderie, that collaboration. But with tools like Sourcegraph, you don't have to tap the guy on the shoulder. But here's a funny question: Have you thought about sort of a collaborative version of Sourcegraph, where so I look up something, and it says not only does it find that snippet of code, but it tells me who committed it, and then I could click that name and somehow pops a Slack or something, sort of like maybe a Zap connection in a Slack team version, Sourcegraph team version. I don't know. Yeah, this is why I'm not a product guy, Quinn, and I do this. But go ahead.
I mean, it sounds like you are a product guy. That's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be adding more of. And some people will look at Sourcegraph and they'll say, well, why do you not have that? Why do you not have these deep machine learning AI features? And the reality is, if you're a company with 30,000 engineers and you have 40 years of code, your legacy code is scattered in 150 different places in 50 different languages. You've acquired 7 companies in the last year. Their code bases are minefields of security problems and all that. Like that, there's just a lot of having one place to search that. There's a lot of stuff where if we can just let you type in a search and see the results everywhere and then fix something across the code, that's good enough. But as developers are using Sourcegraph more and more, I mean, some companies like Uber, we have thousands of Uber employees every single day using Sourcegraph for code search. And as you have people, they've been using it for a year every single workday, they're coming to us with these kinds of things, not just how can we help them search, but how can we help them feel fulfilled? How can we help them communicate? How can we help them feel a part of the team? Because they've got that screen with Sourcegraph up all the time. And if we can do something to help them connect with other devs, to help them learn from their teammates better, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact because they know they've got it up on their screen and they know all of their teammates do. So we got to be doing things like that. And I will say we are hiring. We are growing. We'll probably be at around 100 people by the end of the year. And that is exactly the kind of thing that we would like to be doing.
Very cool. Very cool. So beyond going remote and doing these kinds of things, tell us about some of the other goings on at Sourcegraph now.
Well, when you build search is this weird kind of product where it's not where the data lives. It's something that people have to decide to use 20 times a day. Google always says We're not a monopoly because our competitors are just a click away. And that's true. And we are also building a search company. What I love about that is it forces us to think, how can we make it so that developer, when they wake up, they will think, I am going to go to SourceGraph because it will help me find a usage example. It will help me find where a bug is everywhere. It will help me do this code review. It'll help me fix this security problem. We need to fight for it every single day. It's like that old, I think, Avis car commercial. We're number 2, so we try harder.
Yep.
We're number 1 in code search. There's no other code search companies out there, but we have to try harder because that's the nature of search. So that there's a ton of work just in making that amazing. But then once you have search, which is something that people are using all the time, well, I mean, customers, as I said, they say, well, all of our developers are using SourceGraph all the time. And so if we could show other information, if we could show stuff from App Dynamics or Lightstep or Datadog, information on the code and have it annotated, both when we're searching and code review, well, that would mean that suddenly all of our developers would understand distributed tracing better, would be able to improve the performance of our applications. We're being pulled in security directions. We see from managers and CTOs and VPs of engineering that they want insights. They don't want to see the lines of code. They don't trust impact or productivity metrics like that, but they would like to know things like, how is this big migration going? They would like to know things like, have we finally deprecated that API that was introduced 10 years ago, and track the progress of things like that. So we're being pulled in directions by our customers. And in a sense, our product roadmap comes from what, a bunch of customers have been asking for. And in some cases, because SourceGraph is extensible, we've got this extension API. We're also, a lot of our code is open source. In some cases, customers have even prototyped or extended SourceGraph to do some of these things for their own use case.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I'm a veteran of the startup scene, right? I've done 5-6 venture-backed companies, startups. Sometimes the hardest thing is learning when to say no. Yeah, it sounds really cool, sounds great, but it's not really our sweet spot, or it's not in the priorities list. There's 2 other things I got to get to first. And it's so hard because you want to, especially if you have a customer who says, I really need this feature. This is a killer feature for us. But it's just a killer feature for them, not for the other 50 customers you have. That's why the CEO gets paid what the CEO gets paid, right? Because someone ultimately has to kind of make these decisions on when to say no. It's easy to always say yes. It's hard to say no sometimes. And I've made mistakes on both sides of that street, so I know firsthand, what happens as a result of it. You mentioned security, but that was also something we spoke briefly about off camera, about adding not just the ability to search source code and code, but if something comes up from a security angle, right? One of these integrations that you alluded to is being able to do something about it. Tell us about it.
Well, the easiest way to think about it is, let's say tomorrow morning you wake up and there is this urgent bulletin of a new security problem found in a specific Java package at a certain version. And you work at the kind of company with 30,000 devs, code everywhere. How do you find everywhere across all of your code that particular package is being used? How do you know all the repositories, all the branches, all the teams, all the release artifacts that use that? And I'm not just talking about for your team, I'm talking about company-wide. And then how long does it take you to fix that? And then once you fixed it, how do you ensure that that doesn't come back? There's a lot of tools that will help you for some subset of this. There are tools like Snyk and WhiteSource and GitHub and GitLab's built-in security checks that they generally lag days or weeks behind the announcements, and they will take a look at single branches of your repositories and your code on GitHub and GitLab. They will probably not look at your legacy code. They probably won't work across multiple code hosts. And we have customers that have hundreds of code hosts. So there's some point solutions, but they work for kind of known vulnerabilities. Search is general purpose. And we didn't build SourceGraph on day one to be an amazing thing for security, but in the same way that Google does so many things that you never even anticipated, our customers are using SourceGraph to do that exact process, to see across all of their code from one simple search box where this package is being used. And what we are introducing is the ability not just to find code on SourceGraph, but to fix it. So find and fix. And once you've found where this package is being used, then go and change that. Go and make 1,000 GitHub pull requests, 500 GitLab merge requests, 500 Bitbucket server pull requests, make perforce changes, make subversion changes, all from one common interface, and then monitor the progress of that. So you see, we're 60% done, and here are the stragglers. Here's where I can go in and help. Here's where the change is passing CI, and so we can automatically merge it. And then once that's in place, that's going to be continuously monitoring for whenever anyone accidentally introduces that problematic vulnerability again. So this universal nature, security is universal because even if code, you're not thinking of code and it's in the corner of your organization, that could still be the thing that causes that $1 billion data breach. So you need this universal approach. And that's what we are doing. And this is one of those cases, you talk about focus. We built search and our customers just started using search for this, and they walked us through this, and our eyes, our jaws were just dropping when we heard how they were using this. So of course, we are now building this out as a first-class feature and talking about it a lot more with SourceGraph.
I don't blame you. I mean, you want to talk about extended find and replace, advanced, that would be, that's game changer kind of stuff. That alone is a reason to use the product. Forget everything else. That's powerful stuff, Quinn. We don't have a lot of time. Go ahead.
I've spoken to a lot of organizations, and they get on a call, they say, oh, SourceGraph looks cool. Like, why do we need it? And I just ask them, well, when there's some critical security problem, how do you find everywhere it exists? How do you go fix it? And I have learned that every organization, from the largest banks in the world to companies that you think of as being so on top of technology, they're all embarrassed by that. They're embarrassed by how long it takes. They're embarrassed that they don't have a way for preventing the regressions on security. And so that's just how we've learned. That's our in.
It's amazing stuff. Hey, we're almost out of time. One more quick thing. I know you guys had a partnership with GitLab. How any news there? How's that thing going? How's things going there?
Yeah, when you're on GitLab, if you turn on the SourceGraph integration, you can just put your mouse over code and you can see all that context that SourceGraph knows about it. Where's the definition? Where is this used? And all kinds of other annotations. So we love GitLab. It's a
tight integration.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies using that.
Very, very cool. Hey, Quinn, we're about out of time. I have to apologize. I loved hearing the SourceGraph, though. I often tell my video crew, if they were raising money, I'd have to really look at them, put a few dollars in. But I love the product. I love what you guys are doing. This security thing sounds like a game changer. Keep up the great work. Stay safe. And come back and visit us on TechStrong soon.
Will do. Thanks, Alan.
All righty. Quinn Slack, CEO of SourceGraph, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
Container Journal centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
First met Kit Merkel when he was VP of Business Development at JFrog. But Kit is just one of those personalities, I guess, within the community. I mean, just the quintessential business development person. Reminds me of me when I was younger. But anyway, I enjoyed talking with Kit. His new company is Noble 9. And he's doing great stuff there, and helping them with their mission of bringing both velocity with reliability. And a great conversation with Kit. Let's go to it now and listen it.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on this segment of TechStrong TV. For this segment, I'm joined by my friend Kit Merker. Kit is a business development executive extraordinaire. He's been in places like Google and JFrog and others, but his role at his new company is even perhaps bigger than that. He's going to tell us about it, as well as introduce his new company. Hey Kit, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey there, Alan. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, Kit, Noble 9, I don't know if we've not introduced the audience to Noble 9 before. I'm sure of it. Why don't you give us a little background? What's Noble 9 about?
Sure thing, Alan. Yeah, so Noble 9, we're focused on helping organizations build more reliable software and to deliver features faster. The 9 in our name is referring to the nines of reliability. So maybe you're familiar with the idea of 3 nines, 4 nines, 5 nines.
Right.
But it's not just about chasing more nines. It's about finding that right balance. And so we talk about the sort of noble pursuit of the right number of nines. And that's what we're really building. So we've kind of taken the site reliability engineering and some other methodologies we've learned from big internet scale companies, and we're trying to apply it to anybody who's trying to transform their business to be mostly digital.
Love it. And Kit, I alluded that you had been at Google and then JFrog, a few other companies. What's your role at Noble 9?
Well, it's a pretty early stage startup. My title's SVP Business Development, but frankly, I'm taking on a lot of our marketing and education, evangelism. I'm also running customer success and support. And I've had the honor of running SLO boot camps, service level objective boot camps for several of our customers, which has been a lot of fun.
You know what? I've been there, done that, Kit. When you're in the startup stage like that, you wear a lot of hats. And what's interesting is as the company grows, of course, you take hats off. And that's not it will. Well, if you're not taking hats off, you're doing something wrong. Right? So that's where that should go. So, Kit, we were talking a little bit off camera, right? And we talked about, look, everything we're doing now is kind of through the lens of what's happening with COVID and everything else. Some say we've compressed 2 to 3 years of cloud transformation, digital transformation, into 2 or 3 months. Some say even more than that. Now, obviously, you guys didn't build a business model. Worldwide pandemic coming around to accelerate use of your software, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart too. And here you find yourself helping companies who want to digitally transform in an atmosphere where there's literally a gun to their head to digitally transform. So I'm interested, how's that played out in what you guys are doing and what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's true. The pandemic, when we started the company, and the trend for reliable software has been clear for a number of years. The acceleration that we're seeing in how people are looking at this, companies that we're talking to, this is a top priority. If you're running digital services of any kind, and now that's pretty much anybody who's in business, you have to have it be reliable. If the service, people can't access it, it doesn't work for them. Then it basically means it doesn't matter how good your shiny features are, right? You need it to work. On the other hand, there's a challenge about chasing reliability and not prioritizing. And people say, I want all my services to have 5 nines. I want perfect reliability everywhere. My joke is I say business executives want 100% reliability, 200% security, and 300% more features than anybody else.
Yeah.
And when you give those marching orders to your engineering team, unfortunately, you're actually telling them nothing. You're telling your engineering team, you know what? It's up to you. You decide what's important. And this is where getting that correct balance, finding the right guidance, instead switching the conversation. So you say, hey, how many times out of 1,000 are you okay having somebody on your website have an annoying experience? And if you can define that as a business leader, you're actually giving a latency service level objective that's actionable that an engineering team can go and actually build. And so that's the one of the shifts we're seeing now. Is not just, okay, digital transformation is kind of a buzzword, but really getting into brass tacks, like getting everybody on the team talking the same language, using the same metrics, using the same kinds of methodology to drive reliability improvements in a very balanced and reasonable way.
Yeah, absolutely. But you hit on something there too, Kit, I wanted to mention, which is, though there's more urgency to the digital transformations that are taking place right now, and we're accelerating them from both manpower, budget, and what we need in terms of timeline. Certain fundamentals haven't changed, right? The idea why the reasons for digital transformation are clearer than ever, but they're the same reasons, right? The idea of how companies adopt and use software haven't changed, right? That whole kind of cloud native, open source, freemium, open core, whatever you want to call that model, Shlomi at JFrog calls it the democratization of IT, right? The idea of, hey, let's get software into people's hands. We can't afford 180-day sales cycles where I'm going to go to the office and meet hand in hand with the CIO along with my sales engineer. It wasn't working before COVID. It was already a dying model. This is certainly put the dirt over the grave.
It's an interesting. So part of building a business, any business at any stage, is you got to sell stuff to pay the bills. And selling to developers and selling to DevOps folks is something that I've been involved with in a variety of ways for many years, regardless of whether that was selling to internal people to adopt the tools my team offered or services we offered, or selling to external companies, whether that was at Google or JFrog. So the insight that I've had on this is that when you want to kind of quote unquote sell to developers, you really have to treat them not as prospects, but really more as students, or maybe even co-students with you. And we've taken an education first strategy to our go-to-market. So we're completely focused on education and helping our users, if you want to call them, or customers, the people who will eventually be customers, we hope, by giving them as much value as we can. And not just like generic value, like let me save you time, let me save you money, but really very specific value. Like how can we take your services and measure them to make them more reliable? How can we help you negotiate with your product manager, right, to make sure that they understand the implications of what they've asked for in reliability? And that's taken on several different forms. We've been producing content, we've been running webinars, we've been doing SLO boot camps, as I mentioned. And I have a new one coming up called DevOps Hustle, where we're going to be focused on actually, the sales methodology of how DevOps SDRs. And I actually am doing this just as a public service, because I think anybody who's trying to sell to DevOps folks or SREs or developers, they should really understand what they're getting themselves into, because you get laughed out of the room if you don't have credibility. And in fact, trying to sell is actually almost the exact wrong approach. It really, you want to start from the other side and be very specific about the value, the problem you're trying to solve, empathize with the actual environment they're in. And if you do that correctly, it'll come back to you. Right? And if you can put enough value out there for people to learn and to understand and to get deeper, they'll come back to you when it's time to turn that into a real thing. You don't have to worry about pushing them or trying to have them meet quarter-end deadlines or any of that kind of stuff. You can really focus your energy on helping people, and I believe it comes back. I've seen it every time. So that's what I'm also kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I've seen your DevOps Hustle post on LinkedIn there. Actually, they're pretty funny, but funny but biting, right? Because look, Kit, we went through a similar thing here at MediaOps with DevOps.com and Container Journal and Security Boulevard too, because security people are more sales adverse than developers, even, frankly, right? They don't want salespeople bothering them, but. And the idea I think today is, and this is why you put your money into DevRel and these evangelists and these kinds of roles, because the role has to be that, hey, we're all community members. We're all on this trip together, right? And we all learn from each other, because even in terms of educating, the only way I'm educating you is because I've spoken to enough of you to recognize the patterns that we that we all are dealing with, right? And so here are some, here are the patterns. Here are some solutions from people like you, how they've kind of dealt with it, and, give it a whirl, right? And give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, that's cool, right? Well, let's find out why it didn't work for you. And if it does work for you, I'm glad we were able to help deliver some delight and make your life easier. We'd like your business kind of thing, right? And maybe you want to take it to the next level. You're not going to twist anyone's arm or high pressure sales them into buying a DevOps solution or something.
It frankly doesn't work, and it's counterproductive. And to the other part of what you're saying, about the travel, as a road warrior myself, I've been on the, this is the longest I've been not on a plane, I think, in 6-7 years. And the thing I think we're all starting to realize is that it was too easy to travel. It was too easy to say, hey, let's all get in a room and hop on a plane. There's a place for it. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely a place, and I can't wait to be back in San Francisco or New York and having dinner with friends or colleagues. But there's also, I think, a realization that a lot of it was an excuse. And being able to just get on a Zoom and chat with people, I'm kind of personally blown away by how much more productive we can be when we're just a Zoom call away from anybody on the planet. It's quite amazing. So I'm hopeful for the future about how we can adopt a balanced view, right, where we don't use travel as a crutch, but we do use it when it really makes sense and to help build the community.
So I'm with you, man. I this is the longest I've been without jumping on a plane since maybe 1998. In all honesty, kid, I've been traveling a long time, and it's a wonder I'm still married. But because I don't know how my wife puts up with me all this time. But that being said, you're right. There are times when being in person is definitely accelerates things and is better. In-person conferences, there's nothing like sitting in a session and then going to talk to people at a bar at that evening at the and have a drink and go over. So right, the hallway track and the evening parties and stuff. But you're right, there's also, we've learned now that you could do a lot on Zoom. And it's not, kid, I would tell you that it's not just prospective customers or external people. Even internally, look, I spent about a dozen years working remotely, right? My company was based in Boulder. I was there maybe 1 week every month, and then I was on the road 3 weeks a month, and living in Florida. So it was a little crazy. And then when I started Media Ops, I said, you know what? I want everyone in the office. And we built an office. Our office is here. And when we went total remote with this thing, I was nervous, quite frankly, right? We're going to lose that special. Yeah, we didn't lose much. I'll be honest with you. We do our Zoom meetings once a day, just like a Scrum, daily kind of meeting. And then, we're on Slack, we're on Zoom. The tools are there. I think for larger organizations too, the realization is that if you hired adults, they do their job.
I think this is a great point, because it really comes down to the care and responsibility of the people in your organization. And if the culture, is that, we reach out, we share what's going on, we're transparent and open with our plans, we check in with each other. If that's your culture, then it doesn't really matter if you're remote or in the same office. If I don't care about the person in the cubicle next to me, it doesn't matter that they're next to me. And I think this is, when we think about what is the future of work and what are the generation coming up, that are joining the workforce, you being able to use the technology, but also caring a lot about genuine connections, seeing the whole person, seeing the richness of the diversity that we can create in our teams. To me, this is the game changer, right? And the technology forcing us, or the situation forcing us to use technology to break down these barriers, to me, this is incredibly exciting. But I will bring the whole thing full circle, because we're incredibly dependent on digital services to make it work. And if we don't have the reliability, and I will keep crusading for this reliability idea, if we don't have the reliability of these services, then it's not just stopping some commercial service, it's stopping the whole train and the whole global economy. And so I'm really excited, but also passionate about telling people, look, you got to get your reliability under control. You need to know what you're doing, and you got to have a plan. So,
you know what? I mean, look, we do a lot of these kinds of interviews. We use Zoom primarily. Our webinars are on a different platform. But anyway, and we have 3 different internet providers here in the office, right? So if something's down, I'm never totally down. But when something is like Zoom's acting up or our Vimeo streaming is no good, it's like, DEFCON stage 5 here, right? We're firing up the missiles. People forget. I mean, can you imagine how bad this would be without an internet? Right? This whole COVID thing. Where would we be without internet? Where would we be without the digital services that even stupid things like not stupid, but even, non-techie things like Instacart or, bringing our food to us and the Amazon and other stores deliveries. You can't be home without these digital lifelines literally feeding you. And those companies that are providing those digital lifelines, you want to talk about 5 nines, 6 nines, reliability levels. They've got to be bulletproof, man. And that's one thing we're finding out here. If kid, I've never met an entrepreneur who, when you ask him why did he start his company or what does their or her company do, in some small way it changes the world. No one says, I started a company because I thought it would be a nice thing to do. Or I thought what we're doing as a company people would like. No, it's got to be a must-have because in some way it changes the world for the better, right? And if you really have a company, service, a product that you think is somehow changing the world for the better, a lesson of this whole thing is it's got to be bulletproof. Right? It's got to be no pun intended, uber reliable, right? It's got, it can't be maybe.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And the whole, dent in the universe, you can get away with it for a while. I mean, people get lucky on reliability. People absolutely get lucky, and they also do interesting what I call questionable accounting of reliability. But if you're really honest with yourself and you really look at the risks in front of you, even like you just said, a plan of having 3 internet connections because one might go down. And having a plan, understanding what your risks are, understanding what's acceptable, and also setting a limit because sometimes it's not worth it. It's not worth the investment. Every 9 you add is another 0 on your bill. And so there is a limit to it. But if you don't prioritize, you say, everything has to be 5, 6 nines. 5 nines is only 5.5 minutes of downtime a year, by the way. It's very tight tolerance. If you say everything has to be 5 nines, you're kind of leaving things out. And if you could instead say, here's a set of services that 2 nines, 3 nines are fine, and here's another set of things that absolutely must work. Think about like browsing e-commerce versus the checkout. Not all transactions are created equal. And so having that clarity in your organization about what matters, this is what allows you to really focus your energy because we all have limited resources, limited time, limited constraints. How do we actually get our organization to deliver what matters? That's the promise of reliability. And I couldn't agree with you more, Alan. Anybody trying to change the world has to ask themselves, how are we going to make sure that it works every time and that people don't leave us for alternatives?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like, there's so many stars. How many stars are in the universe? Billions and billions. How many different things can happen for good or bad within, billions and billions? But when you put them in the pressure cooker of the situation we're in now, it's almost like it's more likely that you'll see corner cases pop up that you normally perhaps wouldn't see as frequently or as often. Kit, we're almost out of time, man, but you know what? We never even told people. How can they find out more about Noble 9?
Well, there's the easiest way is go to noble9.com, NOBL9.com. And also, please follow us on Twitter, Noble9 Inc. We have tons of resources. We have meetups from time to time. We've got webinars. And you can also hit me up on Twitter, too. At Kit Merker.
Or LinkedIn.
If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm easy to find. But thanks so much for having me, Alan, and I'm looking forward to hopefully talking to you again.
Anytime, Kit. There's always an invite here for you, my friend. All right. Kit Merker, SVP Biz Dev, and a whole bunch of other hats over at Noble 9 here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, our next section is the something old for today out of TechStrong Con. It features two folks from Red Hat, Anna Queller and Darpan Sonoy, and this was their presentation at TechStrong Con and using open practices and open technology to solve enterprise issues. It's really a case study on one customer's transformation journey. I think you'll enjoy it. Let's go to it now.
Welcome everyone. My name is Anna and I am an engagement lead in Open Innovation Lab.
Hello, I'm Darpan and I work as a UX designer in the Red Hat Open Innovation Lab in EMEA.
As you could notice from our introductions, we both work for Open Innovation Labs. The vision of Open Innovation Labs is to unlock our customers' greatest possible potential by leveraging open technology, open process, and open culture. There is one more essential ingredient that needs to be brought into the mix. It's called Open Practice Library. Open Practice Library is a community-driven repository of practices and tools. They are shared by people who are currently using them with people who want to learn about them. You can access Open Practice Library at openpracticelibrary.com. Alternatively, you can scan this QR code. To help navigate the library, all practices can be visualized on Canvas based on the outcome delivery framework that has three parts: discovery, options, and delivery. And they are connected with the infinity loop called Mobius. So discovery is here to generate outcomes, options how to get there, and finally delivery to test them and understand which are working, which are not working. In addition to that, there is a foundation layer that captures practices that provide culture and collaboration, and technical engineering. We discover why, what, for whom we are building, and then we build it continuously to measure and learn more, which inevitably prompts more discovery. The intent of our lab residencies is to take the full team on a journey of continuous discovery and continuous delivery.
Let's say there was a customer, they were plagued by inflexibility and lack of innovation, with projects being delivered with dedicated hardware with long provisioning times. Upgrades and non-critical patches for existing applications were hardly ever performed, and they were providing services to their customer who really wanted to see their services being delivered in the cloud, but there was no cloud footprint so far. There was no culture of reuse. Every project was reinventing the wheel. Furthermore, they were measuring anything and didn't know if they were improving or not. They knew that this was the time for change. They needed to be able to provision a production quality environment on the cloud in just a few clicks. They wanted to move to product-based delivery so their services could be packaged and offered to customers. One day they came across Red Hat OpenShift. They understood that the technology was one of the components to help them fulfill their dreams. They soon realized that it wasn't enough and that having a combination of the right technology, processes, and culture in places was key for their ambition. And Red Hat had just the right solution for them: Open Innovation Lab and residency. What is a residency, you may ask? It is an immersive engagement where Red Hat architects, UX designers, software engineers pair one-to-one with a customer team of 3 to 6 people to co-create digital solutions. Soon, the customer embark on their container adoption journey with Red Hat, starting with the Open Innovation Labs. We are now going to take you for the walk the walls of the residency and show you how we use the open practice library practices throughout the journey with the customer to solve the problems.
Our first stop is the impact map. As you can see in the discover loop, it's located at the very beginning because it's one of the practices that answer the why question. It is an engaging strategic planning technique that was introduced by Gojko Adic. He was concerned that a lot of planning activities revolve around juggling, as he called it, shopping list of features, and even though those features are delivered, often the business objective is not achieved. Impact Map reorients us towards that business value. It is an excellent way to allow leadership and autonomous teams to have a conversation around strategic priorities and how they translate into the work that the team has to deliver. So how does it link to our residency story? That was the very first thing that we did together. You can see here the team in process of doing the impact map. 2 hours later, we had shared understanding of the goal, becoming the top data intelligence company in that country's market, having satisfied customers, and so on and so forth. Then we moved on to understand who can help us achieve that goal, or maybe who would prevent us from getting there. So we generate this list of potential actors. And as you can see, we've got a mix here of individual actors and the groups of actors. Next step gave us an inventory of human behavioral changes that must occur or not occur for us to be successful in what we're doing. They are called impacts. We also generated potential features, solutions that could help us achieve the impacts that we desired. And finally, we asked the team to prioritize the top 3 impacts that they wanted to focus on first. It's important to mention that the impact map is a collection of hypotheses. You know what you know at a given point of time. So you might assume that by understanding the pain points of your customers and building solution for them, you might be able to improve customer satisfaction. You set on the journey to verify that hypothesis. If that's not the things you should be doing, then you go back to the impact map and you pick up the next high priority item that you wanted to focus on. You might not need to implement the full map. You might be able to find the right solution by prioritizing the right impacts sooner. If you want to learn more about impact mapping, don't forget to visit Open Practice Library. In the meanwhile, let's proceed to the next stop.
The second thing on the discovery loop is the target outcome. So let's talk about target outcome. Target outcome is a tool to capture and articulate the goal and outcomes a team is striving to deliver. They can include customer-based outcome, usually end-user outcome, as well as business and capability-based outcomes. Often harnesses and summarizes the finding and learnings from other discovery practices into a finite set of statements that can be publicly displayed for team and stakeholders to regularly reference. And this is exactly why we use them. We had the full map of impacts and ideas, but only 6 weeks. We needed to achieve alignment and focus across stakeholders, groups, and team members. We also wanted our team to think about achieving measurable customer and business outcomes, where the focus is more on impact as opposed to purely outputs. Finally, it was a visual reminder to everyone on the current outcomes of focus. During 6 weeks of residency, we referenced that board several times during prioritization sessions. Before we move on, let's talk a little bit about a small yet powerful practice that often goes hand in hand with the target outcome. It's called priority sliders, and it's a tool that facilitates conversation about relative priorities and focuses upcoming activities. As you can see in this example here is a finite set of topics areas that can be relatively prioritized against each other. We have a slider for each dimension, where groups of people collaboratively slide the relative importance to the right, which is more important, or left, the less important. The practice increases the autonomy of teams by enabling alignment and consensus on areas of focus. It is very useful in situations where the trade-offs needs to be made between several options. So just to summarize, we now have focus outcomes for the 6 weeks of residency and relative priorities. Let's continue our journey to the next stop.
As we travel down the discovery loop, we need something that would help us to explore the what and the who question. And we found just the right practice called event storming. It is a rapid interactive approach to business process discovery and design, that originated in the domain-driven design community, namely Alberto Brandolini. The greatest advantage of this practice is that it establishes a common and shared language between business and technology. As you can see here, we've got a mix of people from business and software developers. That is the snap from one of our days of the residency that we are talking about in this session. How to run event storming. You will need an unlimited modeling space, ideally a wall that's covered in the whiteboard paint. But if you don't have one of those, a roll of paper that you can use on any wall will do just fine. The alternative are those foam boards that we have in the example underneath. Then you need loads of colorful sticky notes and pens, obviously, but the most important ingredient is the mix of people with questions and the people who know the answers to those questions. Alberto Brandolini specifically mentions that the chairs should be kept out of sight to promote walking around and collaborating between the groups. So let's talk about our residency. We took about 3 days to do enough event storming to be able to move to the next step. After 3 days of event storming, the team gained shared understanding of the business process we're building. That included steps that should be considered in scope, steps that were not in scope for the first focus sprint. We understood some users that were involved in the process. We had an initial inventory of UI screens for the process, and we started seeing the initial logical architecture. As you can see here, in the 6 weeks, we produced about 6 of these boards. They are nearly 2.5 meters or 8 feet long, and for the purpose of the session, we recreated one of them so we can look a little bit more into details. Let's start with the example here. The flow we are going to discuss is when one user can share data with other users. So the team would start with building the events. Events is anything that's denoted on the orange sticky, and it's anything that happened that people care about. So we would have the user A from organization A got authenticated, and then the data layers for that user got listed, and then he selected what he wants to share, and so on and so forth. Then we would produce the list of commands. Commands are the instructions to do something that matters in the system. Commands are shown on the blue stickies, and once we've got the commands, then we can start adding other elements. The purple sticky note, for example, is a policy. Policy goes whenever something happens, then something else happens. The green ones is the data that gets entered into the system, and so on and so forth. Moving on to the key. We already discussed events and commands and mentioned the policy. You can see from here there is much more items that you can use in your modeling. It's a great practice to model software solution among the other things, and I really recommend to visit the Open Practice Library to read a little bit more on how to use event storming. Let's move back to the Mobius loop so Darpan can tell us a little bit more on how to find out more about the users that we identified.
So the next thing on the discovery loop is empathy mapping. So let's discover what is empathy mapping. And empathy mapping is a collaborative visualization tool used to develop insight of our customer, in other words, end users. It is often a starting point for gaining empathy for the people a team is solving problem for. The 2 benefits of using these practices are: 1, this will help to align shared understanding in a team, so we are all thinking and referring to our users in the same way, for example, product persona. And then number 2, we can make correct decisions quicker by learning from our end users. During the residency, we put emphasis on the end users, and hence we adapted practices from human-centered design. In this particular case, we use empathy mapping and product personas to define a group of people, which are end user segments. The information was also added from the qualitative research methods like user interview, observation techniques like AEI-UU framework, and the other facilitated conversation exercise to contextual research. The first one in the quadrant is think and feel. And this section is a bit tougher than others, as this refers to internal thoughts on what a user is thinking or feeling throughout specific task while trying to accomplish the goal. The other one in the quadrant is C. This section captures what or how the person has observed or identified different things throughout the task. Says and do. This section captures what actions do the user take in order to accomplish the task and what does the user says about it. while doing those tasks. Pain, the area captures any major fears, obstacles, and frictions that occur. And gains on the other side, this area captures any wants or user needs that will eliminate these pain points. The real benefit of this exercise comes from doing it collaboratively in the team. At this stage, you have seen in the picture all the team members captures information, diverge to review the research from each quadrant, then later converge all of those different post or cluster similar ideas together and name those fields, like in the picture. So the outcome of this is a shared visualization of who a user is amongst the wider organization. This also helps to develop new or validate the existing product persona throughout the project. Give each user a name, as we have given a name, Andy, to our persona. This helps humanize them and is part of building a common vocabulary to describe your user. So let's move on to the next step.
Every time you come out of the delivery loop, you want to be able to deliver an increment of product that is delivering value to the users. You might remember the comment that our friend Goiko made when we were talking about the impact map. With that in mind, we needed to visualize learning and understanding of discovery practices, impact map, event storming, and empathy map. This is why we use the practice called value slicing. So value slicing is the different restructured release plan that gives you enough detail to get started with the work. In value slicing, we use categories, sometimes referred to as spine, to bucket up ideas, experiments, technical spikes, features, anything that constitutes outcome to the users. With our residency, we focus on categories for target outcomes, upskilling, proving tech, and finding out the roadmaps, what happens after residency. We also added some impacts from impact map and the main business areas from event storming. All our deliverables, called RIBs, were then grouped under those categories, and the team working with business stakeholders prioritized them into the slices that could be released. When discussing the value, we have a great drawing here by Henrik Nieberg, who is probably the most famous agile coach in the world these days. As you can see, it's all about enabling the user to do their jobs from the first release. So here the user just wants to be able to travel from point A to B. Even if the skateboard is not the fastest way to get there, it's still better than just having one wheel. In our example here, as you can see from the screen, the highest value was in setting up the application skeleton, getting the team on the same page as far as the technology choices were concerned, and building the continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. Also, the strong focus was put onto starting with user experience. Then we gradually moved into building other capabilities of the application, like search, and then storage, and so on. So let's go back to DARPAN.
Located in the options part of the Mobis loop is the product backlog. So let's explore what is product backlog. The product backlog is a prioritized list of features. It's owned by the product owner and frequently refined based on the information gathered from user feedback. As you can see in the picture, the team is going through the backlog refinement process. This allowed everyone in the team to build shared understanding on what was the scope of work in the backlog. What are the conditions of satisfactions we needed to fulfill as a team, plus how we prioritize about what we as a team need to do first. Now, we know what the product backlog is, so let's move on to the next step.
With product backlog in place, we are ready to start the delivery. We followed Scrum as framework. Every sprint would start with sprint planning, and then when the sprint started, each day the team synchronized their activities in the daily stand-up. Every sprint, we would deliver working software as a product increment. As you can see here, we started from the skeleton, then we sorted out some security, sharing, search, storage, and so on. And there's also a quick picture of our burn down chart for all the 5 sprints. On top of that, every sprint we run the UI workshop. Darpan, since you are an expert, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Of course. This practice is also known as collaborative design in Lean UX. The practice was born in the architecture world where it was called Design Charrette, to bring the cross-functional team together to visualize the potential solution to a design problem. Considering 6 weeks is a very limited time, So the workshop allowed us to come together and sketch the very best solutions in a limited time. Yes, we did a lot of sketching and applied double diamond techniques to diverge and converge. We revisited the impact map, event storming, and empathy map. The exercise eliminated a lot of duplication and helped us to collaboratively build and develop a method to test the best possible solution. The next on the delivery loop is measure and learn, where things like usability testing, sprint review, and retrospective took place. So let's explore this loop in detail. As we mentioned, how sprint planning activities took place and helped the team to build consensus on what we needed to do next. We even built our prototype. So what was next? Yes, we needed to measure all results against what we built together to decide whether we can develop a viable business around our solution. So we do not waste our development time and build technical debt. As we can see in the picture, we met the targeted users to gain useful insights into what worked and didn't by doing the usability testing with our prototype. We also performed A/B testing experiments and compared the users with two combinations of solutions. So we know what to do next in order to develop and refine our solutions continuously. At the end of sprint, we were releasing an increment of a working software that was showcased to all interested stakeholders. Finally, we ran a retrospective to look for opportunities to continuously improve with short time-boxed activities. As you can see in the image, the format of retrospective we ran during the residency. You can find more detail about the practice on our open practice library. So we've covered continuous discovery and continuous delivery. Now is the time to mention that in order to make them effective, we needed to have a solid foundation in place, which is Foundation Loop. Foundation Loop contains a mix of practices that help to put the psychological safety and the culture and collaboration in place, and technical engineering practices that allow for continuous delivery at a sustainable pace so the team doesn't get stuck with the technical debt, manual testing, and so on. During our residency, we used lots of them. They are available in the Open Practice Library. Today, we are going to cover just a few of them. Let's start with the social contract. The social contract is a simple yet highly effective manner to enable team autonomy and self-accountability for engagements. The social contract is created by the team. It looks to codify the behaviors and expectations of the team. It also provides a mechanism for the team to irradiate and share its desired behaviors with management and other stakeholders. Key points to consider: the team agreed to hold each other accountable to the contract. Having every team member physically sign the contract can provide a good starting point for this. Revisit the social contract often and update as necessary. Another great little technique is Stop the World. A Stop the World event is when somebody on the team identifies that the engagement is off the track for one reason or another. The full team then works together to find a compromise that is acceptable to all and continues progress towards customer success. By the end of the Stop the World event, the team should all be in agreement with the proposed compromise, identify actions or changes and owners, maintain good psychological safety among the team. It was very powerful for our team members to use this tool when we cuff ourselves, not focusing on the sprint goal, but driving deep away into future with some architectural decisions. Another practice that we wanted to mention is the visualization of work. This practice involves radiating and visually representing all aspects of work. Information that is useful to team members, stakeholders, and users is physically presented on walls, windows, doors, and other flat surfaces and positions in the line of sight those people will get value from consuming the information. Visualizing work helps facilitate a transparent and open ways of working. It helps avoiding hiding information about status, any progress, direction, challenges, and opportunities related to product. Traditionally, such information is held in files and shared drives, for example, spreadsheets and project plans, PowerPoint slides, Word documents, etc., which has the challenge of not being accessible and known about, and if found not being up to date. When important information is constantly accessible and visible to people, both speed and accuracy of their work can be improved with reduced wastage from having to search for information. It is also more likely that the information is accurate because people are continuously being reminded of it. Here are some pictures from our residency to show that practice. Let me pass you back to Anna, who will explain a handful of technical engineering practices.
Thanks, Darps. So let's move to this part of the loop. As you can see, there is a handful of technical engineering practices. We used all of them in our residency. In details, we are going to cover just 3 of them, but remember, all of them can be found in the Open Practice Library. So if you are interested, by all means, go to Open Practice Library and read about them. The first practice I'm going to mention is called Emergent Architecture. It provides technical basis for a fully evolutionary and incremental implementation approach. It helps developers and designers respond to immediate user needs, but it also allows the design to evolve as the system is being built and deployed. Here you have an example from here that we just put in the loop. You can see how things were added. They are color coded, so sprint 1 is in black, then in sprint 2 we added elements in blue, then finally in sprints 3, 4, and 5 we added other elements. The next practice I wanted to bring to your attention is called Everything as Code. It's the practice of treating all parts of the system as code. This means storing configuration along with the source code in the repositories such as Git or SVN. Storing the configuration from bottom to top as code means that they are tracked and can be recreated at the click of a button. You can see the code we created during the residency here in the visual tool. Coding everything allowed us to demonstrate to the business during one of the showcases that we're able to completely trash all our development environments, and then with one button click, they were rebuilt in about 5 to 10 minutes. And finally, build monitoring. It's not a new concept. There's loads of tools in place that everybody is using on the daily basis that are alerting about something going wrong with the build. The beauty of this is the build monitors. It's kind of ties up to visualization of work that Darpan already mentioned to you. But it's more about building this team's accountability for when things go wrong. So when we see that the master branch goes red, everybody drops everything they were working on, all hands on deck. We are trying to solve the build because we want to make sure that by the end of the sprint, everything is fully integrated and we've got a working build. In this last part of the journey, we will highlight the outcomes of the 6 weeks residency. We will still talk a little bit about yet another practice that we used. It is called metrics-based process map, and as you can see here, it belongs in the discovery loop. Metrics-based process map visually represents the way the work flows within the organization from the time the customer requested a good or service until the time they received it. As I said, it belongs in the discovery section, but we actually used it to understand how the new ways of working and technology improved the existing process. They compared their last project that they delivered just before starting the journey with us. It was delivering a particular application. So for that one, the processes and dependencies were identified. They looked into process time, which is the actual time it takes to do given tasks, like writing code, running a test script, and so on. And then the lead time and dependencies around it. They also evaluated the confidence in that process. So how many times it failed, how many times it needed to be reworked, and so on. So for this application, it was analyzed how long it takes from the moment it was in inception to the moment it was released as a minimum viable product. For the new process, the gain was about 73 days was removed from the process, which is more than 2 months. So the future release time for the process time was 3 times faster. In the lead time, it was even more because automating cut down on some of the dependencies. And there was even gain for some of those pre-delivery activities like setup time. The process time improved by 1.5 times and the lead time nearly 2.5 times. It is the same stands for the post-delivery activity. What was also important was that the confidence in the process grew from about 60% from the previous ways of working to 95 to the new ways of working. As we mentioned at the beginning of our journey, the technology and process are not enough. We need people and culture to achieve great results. There's no question about that. So the residents went back to their office as a long-lived team. During the residency, we put a lot of focus on creating the team identity. We had logos, we had crests, we had team name, team t-shirts. We did a lot of team building activities, socializing, team lunches, movie nights, escape rooms, and so on. And that paid off. Our team not only continues working that way, but they also onboarded new team members, and now they expanded into multiple teams. They told us they felt that how they work now is so encouraging that people really want to join their teams and work with them as part of the cross-functional team. We also spoke to our product owner recently, and he said that following the residency, he spoke to one of the architects that was part of the extended team. The architect said, "This is actually the first time in 20 years working with our organization that I was able to discuss problems with a mix of business and technical people in the same room." So overall, our team, our customer really bought into starting with why and focusing on delivering better customer outcomes. We're really impressed to hear from them that when they now bring on the new project, they change the narrative from, "Oh, let's go and build it," to "Let's stop, let's collaborate with our users and understand what they need to build the right thing." That resulted in improved customer satisfaction. As you remember, the first impact we were talking about when we discussed the impact map was exactly that. It was about customer satisfaction. So that is now paying off. It's not just the customers that are happier. Also, people working for those customers are happier. They feel connected to the value. DARPAN has been keeping an eye on their evolution in approach towards user experience. So what is the last outcome we want to mention, DARPAN?
Last but not least, the company has adopted a lean user experience methodologies where the team has understood the importance of building empathy for their customer, who are their end users, and switching to the human-centric approach will be the best way forward.
Okay, that's all we had for you today. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you enjoyed our session. Bye-bye.
And please do not forget to check out other sessions from the Open Innovation Lab. Thank you.
Okay, as usual, it's now time for our news. Headlines from around the websites. Over on Security Boulevard, we have police buy hacked data to fish for evidence. Is it even legal? I don't know if it's legal, to tell you the truth. I mean, there's all kinds of issues there of ethics, of chain of evidence, and everything else. It's a good article, though. Go check that out. Also, up over on the Boulevard, we have report of digital transformation increases cyber risk. Everything increases cyber risk at some point, but I think you're going to have to weigh that for yourself. But read the article. It has some good notions on it. Also, survey surfaces heavy security toll from alert fatigue. That's always been a problem in security, right? Desensitizing people to this. And have a read on that one. Over on Container Journal, our friends at the CNCF embraces operator framework to manage Kubernetes environments. They're continuing to add to their horde of open source projects that they are managing. Dockering deepens ties to AWS cloud services. Good to see the folks over at Docker are taking what they have and making the best of it. And then over on DevOps.com, we have how IAC bridges the divide between DevOps and security. We also have bringing NetOps up to speed with DevOps. NetOps is a new term we're starting to hear more and more around. And then Time Series Virtual Summit Speaker Spotlight, James Governor, Samir Farouni, and Russ Savage. I love listening to James Governor from over at Red Monk. He's I think they're one of the few analyst firms that get the DevOps space. He's keynoting that Time Series Virtual Summit that we are helping put on with our friends at Influx Data. Go check that out. Check out the Influx Data virtual event. It's chock full of great stuff. It's this week. Don't miss it. And that'll do it for the news today. Now we're going to go over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, who has a great interview with folks from Liberty Mutual, and then a good preview of this week's amazing webinars on Media Ops. Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, and I am here now with Dave Anderson, all the way from Belfast, who is Director of Technology at Liberty Mutual. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you, Charlene. Really appreciate the time and looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we are going to focus on the future of serverless technology, which I know is a topic that a growing number of companies are really looking at, especially, in these times when a lot of digital transformation is happening with companies that really needed to kind of pivot to be successful and maybe even just survive in today's COVID-19 environment, and everybody's working from home, and so I imagine that serverless is playing a larger role in a lot of companies' digital transformation efforts. So I would love to hear your thoughts on serverless technology, what you're seeing now in the market, what you're seeing companies doing, and just to kind of give us a perspective of what's going on out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a really kind of exciting time in the serverless environment, especially with COVID. Over this past few months, the most important thing is kind of putting our people first and really thinking about our business. So I think that's the kind of first thing. But then as we start to get used to this new normal of working from home, there's increased demand for digitization. So I think all the kind of dialogue we've been having with our business partners, people are kind of really, looking to accelerate digitization efforts. I think we've been quite fortunate in Liberty Mutual that we have, with our cloud native strategy and our serverless first strategy, we have lots of teams that are really thinking in the right way and they're able to build quickly. So, I mean, that high velocity of delivering value and products really quickly has really kind of helped us. So we've been able to answer that kind of demand for maybe, changes in functionality or more digitization. So serverless has really helped us deliver business value quicker. We talk about time to value, not so much time to market, but time to value. How can you get things in the hands of your customers? So it's been a good time.
So did you guys start your serverless journey pre-COVID, or was this something that you had possibly been talking about but never really got going until you recognized that there was a true need with the pandemic happening?
No, it's probably it's been several years in the making. Yeah. Our cloud journey probably started about 5 years ago, and it was really moving towards the public cloud. And we had quite a pure cloud native kind of thought to how we do that, and that gradually evolved into serverless. So I would say we probably started getting large applications into production over the past 2 or 3 years. Like one of our big applications we put about 2 years ago was our virtual assistant, which was a kind of voice assistant for when you call up to the call center. It's effectively like Amazon Alexa, kind of you deal with natural language. So things like that, it really opens people's minds to the art of the possible.
Yeah, it's interesting, the thought of using it for for these AI technologies and machine learning, and it seems like those seem to be applications that serverless is almost kind of made for, if you will. But where do you see serverless as kind of maybe doing the most good, if you will?
I think for us, we did notice that we had one system that was responsible for kind of what we call disbursement, the payment of funds. And that was a system that we had written in a serverless manner. So when you write a well-architected serverless system, you've effectively written it to scale. So when something unexpected happens, like the COVID crisis, where we had to maybe reimburse a lot of policy payments quickly, that was a demand that you couldn't plan for. So one of our teams, I think it was announced, and the next day it was like, okay, we got to, make all these extra payments. So that required basically no changes because they had the capacity to scale those extra payments out. And again, at a time like COVID, where you want to put your customers and policyholders first, you can't say, okay, we're going to do a refund and we're going to wait for 3 months while you build it. You need to be quite prompt with those transactions. So that was good that we could put our people first. Excellent. So
where are you guys along your serverless journey now, and what do you see as kind of the next steps for you?
So I think we've been lucky in the sense that we have a really strong core of engineering and cloud engineering, and that we have lots of teams who are starting to think in that kind of serverless mindset. And one of the key messages, there's 2 key messages. The first one is that code is a liability. So trying to actually, work with teams to write less code is quite a different mindset than kind of maybe yesteryear. And then the second thing is it focuses teams on business value. So it gets teams very close to the business problem, and they can deliver value quickly. So I think that it's quite it's a very different feel for a software team. It's really it's been agile, it's been cloud native, and it's been human centric. So there's a lot going on there. So it really is sort of digital transformation in a box. So that sounds simple, but at a very large enterprise, there's a lot of work there,
Sure.
Because there's, you've many teams. So for us, it's good that we celebrate the fact that we're serverless first, but we also, I wouldn't like to get cocky to say we're there yet. It's a constantly shifting, it's a shifting scale, so it's fun. But the big thing for me, which I really enjoy, you need to create a learning environment. So we're encouraging our engineers to learn quickly. And as any of these cloud platforms, they're changing all the time. So there's always the latest improvements to keep up with. So it's I think we're making great progress, but much more to do.
So I imagine, though, that there are certain applications or certain environments where serverless actually is not a good idea. What do you see as kind of the keep serverless away type of environments? Are there certain environments that really don't work for serverless?
Well, we find that it's actually very interesting. As the technology improves, there are less barriers. There were some barriers in the last 2 or 3 years that we had to overcome, but they've kind of disappeared now as the cloud vendors have made improvements. So, it's a bit like you're driving your car and the engine keeps improving itself, which is kind of cool. But so there's some complex things we've done, like financial processing, back office work that I wouldn't have thought would have been a use case. But in some of our older systems, Liberty Mutual are over 100 years old. We have some old systems. You can't just go into the middle of a system and start writing, serverless functions. So what we find is sometimes it's okay to keep the old system running, but you end up writing more innovative functionality adjacent around the edge of it. So you start, adding on new functionality. So it's sometimes an interesting challenge trying to create that homogeneous environment, the legacy along with the serverless. So it's not for every use case, but we find it's a great platform for innovation.
Great. So do you see it as going to be kind of this hybrid environment for a while, where your organization is still running some of those older kind of systems of record, if you will, mainframes and other types of technologies, along with the serverless, and then maybe doing that kind of gradual shift to serverless?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the phrase I like to use is evolutionary architecture. Mm-hmm. So your architecture continues to evolve. Legacy is not a bad thing. If you've got a 20-year-old system that's well written, it keeps running, and that's good. But our approach is what's called serverless first. So for anything new that we're looking at, we look at serverless first. And if that isn't a good use case, we'll kind of go back maybe to, containerization, infrastructure as a service. So we kind of have a spectrum that we fall back on. So that means you do end up doing a lot of integration, but it's a really kind of creative environment for engineering teams.
Cool. Well, it sounds like you guys have a good handle on the serverless today and where you want to take the technology. So that is really great stuff. And I imagine we're going to have lots more conversations about serverless technology in the months ahead, as more organizations, if they haven't already started with their digital transformation efforts, then serverless is definitely going to be top of mind for them when they do. So Dave, thank you so much for walking me through what you guys are doing and your thoughts on the future of serverless. And I'm sure there's a lot of takeaways there for folks. So thanks again. I really appreciate your time, your expertise.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, everybody, please stick around. We have lots more happening on TechStrong TV, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I'm here on this fabulous Monday for the webinar previews. And we have 3 great webinars coming up this week. We have a ton of webinars this week, but did want to highlight 3 that are coming up that I thought you guys might be interested most in. So let's go ahead and just get started now. The first one is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, July 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It is called Cloud Native Data Protection for Kubernetes and Red Hat OpenShift, and this is sponsored by Trilio. The webinar actually takes a look at data protection as it pertains to Kubernetes environments. So the cloud native market, a lot of the challenges that are associated with traditional data protection technology, a lot of that just doesn't work in a cloud native environment. So absolutely, if you are having any issues with data protection in your cloud native environments, this is the webinar for you. During the webinar, he's going to introduce and demo a new application-centric backup and recovery product. It was actually designed from the ground up to manage and support Kubernetes environments. So Good stuff. Good stuff. Totally worth checking out. Our second webinar that I wanted to highlight for you is happening Wednesday, July 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and this one is going to be on Security Boulevard. It's called #Protect2020, Securing the Heart of Our Election Systems. This one is sponsored by Cisco, and I'm especially interested and excited for this webinar. Steve Kamey from Cisco, as I said, is going to be on hand to discuss a lot of what's happening currently with our election systems in the technology, from the technology perspective, why it's so hard to secure those election systems, and what MITRE has offered up for its advice for the most important steps that organizations should take to protect their election systems. And of course, he's going to talk about how Cisco can also play a role in that. So definitely, if you're interested in what's happening with election system technology and security thereof, definitely this is one you want to check out. So please join us for that one. Again, that one is Wednesday, July 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. Final webinar today that I wanted to highlight is also happening Wednesday, July 15th. This one is happening at 1 p.m. on DevOps.com. It's called Making Security More Efficient for Developers, which is a great topic because really, seriously, who doesn't want to make security more efficient for developers? Arun Balakrishnan from Shift Left is going to be on hand to discuss how companies can actually rethink their application security workflows for developers from the ground up to, as we said, make security more efficient for developers. So I hope you're able to join us for that one. DevSecOps is always one of those topics that garners a lot of interest from all areas of security and development. So hopefully you'll be one of the folks who join us for that webinar. Again, that one is happening Wednesday, July 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. All right, that's it for this edition of the webinar previews. Please tune in tomorrow. I'll have 3 more that I'll be previewing for you guys. And until then, please, happy viewing and stay safe.
Thanks, Charlene. Great stuff. Hey, the webinar lineup this week is extraordinary. As Charlene gave you the preview. You can check them out on DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, or Container Journal, depending. But please do, our webinars overall are pretty darn good, but this week is really great. Please go check them out. Next up, we have the Analyst Corner with Mitch. And, of course, it's the Accelerated Strategies Group giving us some words of wisdom to live by here. And let's go to that now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Analyst Corner. My name is Sanjeev Sharma, Principal Analyst and co-founder of Accelerated Strategies. And I want to be talking about a very interesting topic today. It's a topic which I keep getting into a lot of conversations around, and I have some very, shall we say, strong opinions about. And that is something called multi-cloud. And it's there in every deck, right? You watch any company's presentation, any analyst firm talking about cloud, any blog post written, they all talk about, the world is multi-cloud. We are in a multi-cloud world. People are coming and speaking at conferences saying, we are doing multi-cloud. We are the best solution provider for multi-cloud. Or if I'm a client saying, I am going to multi-cloud. And I get engaged in a lot of conversations with senior leaders at companies where they ask me, okay, we want to do multi-cloud. Can you help us? What does it take? How do we do it? How do we make sure our approach is successful? And I challenge that thinking a lot when I start having these conversations. The first thing I'm trying to figure out is, do they really need multi-cloud? Or actually, before that even, I try to figure out what does multi-cloud even mean to them? It's like that meme which goes around, right? Where the guy says, this term you're using, I don't think it means what you think it means, right? And that's happening a lot with multi-cloud, right? I mean, in most cases, when people talk about multi-cloud, what they really mean is multiple clouds. That means they have multiple clouds adopted across their enterprise, across their organization. They have some things running on one cloud and some things running on the other cloud, and that's where they live, right? I've got some workloads running on AWS, and I use Office 365. Is that multi-cloud? It's multiple clouds, right? But there's no connection between the two. Maybe they make API calls across each other. And I'm using Salesforce, right? Does that just using Salesforce make you multi-cloud? No, right? I would argue, right? So multi-cloud means something else, right? Now, why do people want multi-cloud? What are they really asking for? What are they really seeking when it comes to a business perspective or a business goal? They're usually looking for portability. They want to be not locked into one vendor. They want to have the ability to be portable in their application across multiple clouds. And I can tell you, portability is not easy. It comes with a cost. It is extremely difficult to do. It is even more difficult to maintain. And it ends up costing a lot of money and time and effort. So it should be done with a good architecture in place and a good business reasoning in place to understand why do you even need to be portable, right? And what does portability even mean? Portability, does it mean every 5 years you make a change? Like, you see some of these government contracts, for example, it says, hey, this cloud, we're going to adopt it. This contract is for 5 years. After 5 years, some other vendor is going to manage it, and we'll put it up for rebid, and somebody else could win it. That makes sense, right? So if you, at the end of the 5 years, another vendor wins it, that means that vendor will now run it on their cloud. And that obviously that application needs to have a migration strategy and exit strategy in place. So portability and vendor lock-in are kind of what is going hand in hand. And there's another thinking also, which is for cost-saving purposes, which says that I want to go where compute is the cheapest, which makes a lot of sense, right? Why would I go to not the cheapest cloud? But how dynamic can you be? Can you do it in real time? And, a lot of cloud brokerage solutions have come and gone, promising that. And yes, it's one thing to say in the beginning of as you start embarking on a journey with cloud, to say, for this workload, cloud A is better than cloud B in terms of cost and infrastructure availability and the SLAs I have. Yes, cloud A is better than cloud B, but saying in the middle of something running in production, saying, cloud B has suddenly given me a discount, let's move everything to cloud B. Does that even make sense? So in order to explain this and talk about, kind of walk you through how I have these conversations, let me give you 3 scenarios, and that'll be kind of the essence of my analyst corner today. And I'll do, in future sessions, I'll go deeper into these challenges as to why portability is not easy. So let me give you 3 scenarios. Scenario 1. And the goal of these scenarios is for you to think, is this really multi-cloud or is it not? Have they made enough of a business case for us to be multi-cloud, or are they thinking a bit, way too much out of the box? So scenario 1 is, this is a flower vendor. It's not like one of the big guys. It's a small flower vendor, and they have a few hundred stores, and they sell heavily online, right? And that's their strategy. We want to sell online. So they built a portal and they're able to sell stuff. Now, flower selling online, flower selling anywhere, has 2 peaks in the year. Just like, for typical retailers here in the US, at least, there's 1 peak in the year, which is Black Friday and the holiday shopping season. In the flower season, flower business, there are 2. No prizes for guessing what they are. They are Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. So this cloud vendor, when it comes to the 3 days before Valentine's Day and the 3 days before Mother's Day, especially the 3 days, this is a real conversation, by the way, I'm not making this up. They want 100% availability, because they have no differentiation, right? I am looking to send buy some flowers for my wife and have them shipped, or have them shipped to my mother. I go to a website is down, I just go to the next website. I'm not hitting retry even. I'm done, right? So they say so much of their business is done during those 6 days. In fact, in this particular client's example, they said it's 92% of their business, annual business, online business, store is different, is done in those 6 days. So those 6 days, they wanted 100% availability. And their reasoning was, for that reason, I want to do multi-cloud. Cannot be dependent on one cloud. Even if they have a few minutes outage, I'm toast, right? So I want multi-cloud. So that's scenario 1. So what do you think? Is this a good example for multi-cloud? Why can't I solve this with multi-regions? The answer, I would say, is yes, this is a good example for multi-cloud, because multi-region is still the same cloud vendor. And what happens in one region goes down, everybody who's in that region for that cloud vendor suddenly wants to go to the next nearest region. So east goes down, they want to go to central or west, or whatever that for that particular vendor is the closest region. And it creates a rush. It creates a bottleneck, because everybody's trying to get to the exit door of this cloud and entry door of that region all at the same time. But if cloud A's region, one region goes down, cloud B, the same reason probably right there might not be impacted at all, unless it's a natural disaster, earthquake or something. And I can easily move to it. Nobody else is doing it, right? Because nobody else will support multi-cloud, or very few people. So it raises the the probability of having availability much higher. So this is a very good example for multi-cloud. Let me go to scenario 2. The scenario 2 is a company which is built some kind of a AI model, and their whole expense is actually compute, right? Number crunching. They want to do heavy crunching, and there's large amounts of data, and they need to go to where the GPUs are the cheapest. So their goal was, we'll build an architecture where we are portable across any cloud, and we'll go wherever compute is cheapest, especially GPUs, or they are the latest, right? And I want to go really fast because that's my competitive advantage. Is this a scenario for multi-cloud? I would argue yes, leaning towards a maybe. The caveat in this question was large amounts of data. While you might be able to save compute by moving from one cloud to the other, the data egress costs are going to kill you if the data is really, really large when you go from cloud 1 to cloud B. Right now, one option is, yes, you leave the data behind. You leave the data at one place and keep moving the compute. Then you got to deal with things like, can that model handle the network latency? What about the data you create at the new cloud where the GPU was cheapest? How do you bring it back? What about the network egress cost of that? So these are considerations that need to be taken, which case this is a possible case for multi-cloud, but with caveats, do your math, right? Do your underlying analysis of how much data you need to move when you move from one compute to the other. The third scenario is actually another AI solution. And in this case, they do some intrusion detection based on AI, and they keep learning based on the behavior of the workload running and the network and how the services communicate with each other. They learn what's happening, and then if a behavior changes, they're able to flag that there's possible, maybe you had an intrusion, or there's a rogue service running, and they need to support all kinds of clouds and workloads, right, and environments. Well, the answer there is they're not multi-cloud. They don't need to be multi-cloud. Where's the portability here? They just need to build their service 3 times to support 3 clouds, or 4 times or 5 times if you add, the number 4 and 5 cloud into the mix, or 6 if you want to add 5 times of, or 7, whatever the number might be of the different various environments you want to support. We just built another version of your application for that. There's no portability requirement here, right? So this is somebody who needs to support multiple clouds. It's not multi-cloud. So that's the analyst corner for today, right? Is multi-cloud for you? Do you really need multi-cloud? Think it through. And if you'd like to, have more conversations with it, myself, and talk about why portability is so different. So come back, look at the schedule to figure out when the next session is going to be, and come back soon.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hello. Welcome to the 9th tutorial in the Engineering DevOps tutorial series. I am Mark Hornbeek, DevOps the Gray, CEO and Principal Consultant of Engineering DevOps Consulting, analyst of the Accelerated Strategies Group, ambassador and course author for the DevOps Institute, a blogger on DevOps.com, and author of the book Engineering DevOps. My website is www.engineeringdevops.com. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about how do you engineer service catalogs for DevOps. So there's a white paper on my website on this topic. If you want to pick it up, it's free. You can go to www.engineeringdevops.com/documents. The agenda for today's tutorial is, what is a DevOps service catalog? Why are service catalogs important for engineering DevOps? How are DevOps service catalogs engineered? What are some engineering practices for DevOps service catalogs? How are service catalogs engineered? And finally, a summary. Let's get started. Okay, so what is a DevOps service catalog? The figure on the left is just one example. Usually it's a collection of stacks and tools and capabilities that are available in somewhat of a standard form, or at least in an available form from an IT service group. So it's essentially a user interface, and in the context of DevOps, it can perform as a DevOps as a service user interface. So it's where people go in the organization to get DevOps services, whether they be stacks for the application or pipelines or even infrastructure or combinations of those things. Essentially, it provides a place to put well-engineered, organized, and curated choices for things like application stacks, pipeline choices, and infrastructures. It also serves as a knowledge center for all things DevOps for the organization, and convenient. Everybody knows where to go format. It provides some level of repeatability because because there are, if you like, so-called at least corporate standard or organizational standard choices. You get controlled inputs, processes, and outputs because they're already pre-assembled for you in a template form or even in a complete form. It includes tools that can be used to measure and calibrate performance, which is particularly important to the organization, its management, and everyone operating DevOps to know, what is the performance of the DevOps system, as well as the applications that are going through the system as changes are made and deployed, or at least prepared for delivery to production. Okay, so why are service catalogs important for engineering DevOps? So engineering DevOps in large organizations in particular can be difficult. You've got multiple apps, pipeline stacks, metrics, workflows. You can have different silos. Some of those silos could be legal, challenges between different geographies or countries or states even. You can have financial silos. You can have cultural changes and differences in the general culture. Some cultures might be resistant to change, or they may be less agile or willing to change. An engineering catalog provides a way to help, make those things available in a format that's compatible with all of those variables. You can create and centrally manage and execute applications, tool chains, and infrastructures through a service catalog. You can resolve the expectations for self-service and on-demand by having the choices available. You can resolve impatience with trouble ticket systems, which is typical inertia with the transformation from traditional software development life cycles to DevOps agile life cycles. You can support experiments while controlling spending and technology choices and enforcing corporate policies, which is really important. You don't want to be so rigid that you only offer certain fixed choices, but a service catalog that's engineered well will allow for some level of variance, but at the same time provide control over the variance in terms of a change management capability on the service catalog itself. Okay, so how are DevOps service catalog engineered? Application teams can onboard their apps and using templates and pre-approved technology for their stacks, the infrastructure they're going to run on, and the app, the pipeline tool chains, and so on. It usually will include some embedded metrics that IT and management have decided they want to use to track the performance of the apps, maybe the databases, testing, releases, infrastructure, continuous security. So some of the choices are embedded in, some of these metrics are embedded in those choices. It's a good way to make sure that you've got tracking. And performance data is made visible across the portfolio of applications. The diagram kind of shows that, that you can have a lot of metric types that you might want to access and be available as a pretty big matrix of things, but you've got planning activities, development activities, integration, acceptance, deployment, and performance for things such as the app, the database that goes with the app, testing and release activities, infrastructure, operations, and even security. So these are some examples of things that you might have metrics for embedded in the choices available from a service catalog. So how are DevOps service catalog engineered in terms of monitoring framework? So monitoring, as I just mentioned in the prior slide, is really important. You want to be able to get logs and data everywhere in the value stream platform to be able to see it in a visible format at top level, top layer. If you go back to the engineering DevOps tutorial 1, you'd see a blueprint for engineering for DevOps overall, and the value stream management is at the top of that, blueprint, and it's a way to aggregate data and analyze it and provide it to all the stakeholders in an end-to-end aggregated view. So interfacing service catalogs to value stream management to provide data to make all these things visible is very valuable. That would be a well-engineered example. How are DevOps service catalogs engineered? Well, you want to have a lot of flexibility. As I mentioned, you don't want to have things so rigid that you only have fixed choices. But at the same time, if you want to have changes, you want to provide some level of change management in the service catalog itself. So the idea is that you do ensure standards for the tool chains and stacks and environments, but at the same time facilitate experimentation requested by users. Sorry, the diagram got cut off a little bit, but let's say you're going from an environment that wants to engage with microservices or service-oriented architectures. So there's a lot of choices in application capability, but meanwhile, the ops people, maybe the site reliability engineers, want to have standard tools to monitor that activity despite the changes that are going on in the app. And they don't want to have to, overextend themselves with a lot of more people in process. So one way to do that is to make sure that the monitoring capabilities built into the choices in the service catalog. Okay, other engineering practices. In general, you want to be able to create things. The diagram on the bottom is essentially a flow chart of a change management process. I'm not going to go through every detail of it, but basically it says that app developers ought to be able to make changes to the service catalog, and those changes ought to be something that can be changed in a methodical way, so they can make changes and at the same time put them up for review and get them approved, and then finally become part of the standard service catalog offering. So an author should be able to, using typically domain-specific language is a good idea, so that you've got one way to make changes. Only approved tools should be included in the tool chain, but at the same time, you should have provisions to make changes through this change management capability. You can provision deployment resources like the cloud or private resources. Once authored and available, the users should be able to self-service and provision their own capability. One app group, for example, should be able to put up their own pipeline combination with the appropriate infrastructure and the app stacks. So the users should also be able to have user groups to customize a portfolio that's maybe only specific to a group of applications. The DSL is valuable to be able to make extensions to new tools and services without having to recode a lot of things in a technically detailed way. Importing templates from a library is a very valuable capability for a service catalog. Updating the offerings on demand with approved capability is certainly very important, again, to keep the service catalog itself under change control. Management capabilities, there's a lot of things around service catalogs. Not everybody necessarily wants to see all the different choices. Some choices may only be available to some, let's say, research group or somebody that's doing an experiment. You can have role-based access controls. The tool chain should have a approval flow for the different steps for making changes. If you're experimenting with different choices, there should be some status capability for service catalog requests. Any chargeback information for tools that require, costs and fees, or infrastructure for that matter. Controlling over the resources is strictly enforced. It's got to be, if you're using this approach, it's a way to assert some level of governance, at the same time providing flexibility. The pipeline itself, as I mentioned before, must include feedback monitoring tools for everybody to be satisfied that the pipelines are being utilized properly and that the progress of the application through the pipeline is progressing as expected without any concerns. The DevOps service catalog should follow the DevOps approach itself. In other words, changes to the DevOps service catalog should also be using incremental change and incremental deployments rather than some big bang deployment. In general, composing pipelines from pre-selected selections is important. Teams should be able to request changes for experimentation, as I mentioned, and there should be records kept of any changes. Okay, so that's kind of the change management view of service catalogs. How are they engineered is getting close to our last slide here. Well, this is kind of a summary. You develop a unified DevOps model. You can bridge the concepts of Agile and ITIL within that model. in order to pull together a change management capability for service catalogs for DevOps. You break down silos without boiling the ocean. In other words, you don't have to change everybody's organization all at once. Start with one model application or a few applications and then prove it, and then expand beyond those apps as you learn more and more things, and proactively share results across the organization. Extend infrastructures to leverage cloud elasticity and scale. That's certainly the trend, and valuable to get the elasticity and economies of scale when things are engineered well, but it needs to be controlled again, because things can get out of control if you don't have control over your elastic cloud. Pay as you go. If you forget to release things, for example, it can cost a lot. Starting with a small team, first mover model application is a good idea rather than boiling the ocean, as I said before. Then connect the islands of automation into a tool chain. So you can have in the service catalog segments of a tool chain, if that makes sense for your organization. Maybe not everybody is at high level of maturity, and all they want is, let's say, continuous integration section of a tool chain. That can be fine, but then some of the more mature applications may want to have, an end-to-end tool chain, or even something more advanced like continuous feedback, or even continuous improvement level of maturity. Using DSLs to bring in maturity, as I mentioned, selecting tools for the service catalog is something that should be available. The service catalog itself, there's a lot of service catalog tools out there. ServiceNow is pretty visible on AIS, there's many others, and some of the DevOps tools themselves, like I think I mentioned in one of the slides, Electric Flow has a capability for this, which is now under CloudBees. The DevOps service catalog should have a governance guideline, and there should be catalog development support for those that want to make changes and introduce new opportunities and choices in the catalog itself. Okay, so last slide. How do you engineer a DevOps service catalog? Well, service catalogs play a useful role in ensuring the choices for applications, pipelines, and infrastructures with built-in tools needed to meet good engineering practices. A well-engineered service catalog goes a long way to supporting governance of the choices. And a service catalog represents a limited number of choices, which helps to contain possible combinations that need to be governed. That's basically the end of the talk today, the tutorial. If you want to learn more, you're certainly welcome to email me at mhornbeek@engineeringdevops.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can get a free white paper at my website, engineeringdevops.com documents, or if you want to get a copy of my book, which covers this also, mybook.to/engineeringdevops. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial. Thank you.
Join top experts and peers for a Splunk virtual event, DevOps Open Source Insights and Innovations. Open source powers the world, drives innovation in technology and in practice, and reduces the proliferation of products that just don't work together. In the arena of DevOps, open source tools and standards enable problems to get solved. Come take a look at some of the ways Splunk solves problems with open source and how we are contributing to open source solutions to make your work life better. Register today.
That's going to wrap us for this Monday, July 13th. We'll be back with a fresh news show tomorrow, July 14th. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel. Stay well, stay safe, stay strong, TechStrong.